Welcome to this explainer on the origins of the Levant. We're going to dive deep into the Eastern Mediterranean, an ancient crossroads of civilizations, empires, and incredibly enduring identities. By peering through the lens of recorded antiquity, shifting empires, and even modern genetics, we are going to reconstruct the epic story of the Levant. We'll be stripping away the noise of modern political lines to uncover the profound, deeply rooted origins of the region's people and places. It's a fascinating story, so let's get right into it. Think about the sheer scale of human history for a second. Our story actually kicks off about 5 millennia before the modern era, right at the very dawn of recorded civilization. The name Lebanon is actually one of the oldest geographic designations preserved exactly as is in the historical record. It's literally etched directly into the Epic of Gilgamesh around 5000 BC. And even in deep antiquity, this wasn't just some vague concept. Its borders were clearly defined, stretching all the way from the ancient Canaanite coastal areas down to the north of the Palestine/Israel region. This was a self-contained entity firmly rooted in the landscape.
And you know what's wild? Modern science absolutely backs up this ancient historical continuity. Back in 2017, a landmark genomic study analyzed populations in Tyre and other regions, and it revealed something incredible. Modern Lebanese people share a staggering 93% of their DNA directly with the ancient Canaanites, the very same people the Greeks would later call Phoenicians. It just goes to show that the biology of the ancient world stubbornly persists in the people walking those exact same mountains and shores today.
That deep biological connection makes the timeline of this region all the more mind-blowing. To put things into perspective, we have Lebanon recorded in 5000 BC. By 3000 BC, the legendary maritime city-states of Tyre and Sidon were already flourishing. Yet, the very first historical mention of the word Syria doesn't even appear until the Roman era in 64 BC. That is a massive, visually striking gap in the timeline. We're talking about a space of nearly 5 millennia where the land and its people had firmly established their own identities long before later empires ever arrived to redraw their map. So where did the name Syria even come from? Well, it's a fascinating linguistic shift that really shows how imperial language can alter our understanding of geography. The name Syria, or Syria, was actually derived by the Greeks from the name of the prominent ancient Phoenician city of Tyre. Natively, Tyre was known as Sur, which became Tisris in Greek. Basically, the Greeks took the name of this highly influential maritime hub and just applied it as a blanket term for the broader, fluid Eastern Mediterranean. It was essentially an administrative designation, a geographic shorthand, rather than a natural pre-existing nation. But how did that Greek shorthand actually get applied to the wider region? Well, Roman archives give us a pretty amazing origin story. When a Roman governor visited his newly acquired territory, he hiked up a majestic, snow-capped mountain. To the indigenous people, this was Mount Hermon, a Hebrew name meaning holy, or Jabal al-Sheikh in Arabic. But as the governor looked out over the vast landscape, he noted that the impressive height resembled a promising leopard clutch. In his language, that translated to Syrians. Right then and there, he decreed that his entire administrative district, encompassing parts of the Palestine/Israel region and Lebanon, would be named after this Canaanite Lebanese mountain. Which brings us to a pretty staggering number, 4,936. That is exactly how many years the documented, deeply rooted entity of Lebanon predates the Roman administrative designation of Syria. For nearly 5,000 years, the coastal dwellers, the vast cedar forests, and the ancient city-states possessed their own native identities and natural boundaries. All of this existed long before foreign powers started clustering them into broad imperial provinces. Now, as Imperial Rome expanded, they started slicing up the map. The Severan dynasty and later Emperor Theodosius II basically treated the region like a massive administrative jigsaw puzzle. They artificially partitioned the landscape into shifting spheres of control. They created Coele-Syria, the hollow north and east. They drew up Phoenicia Prima to cover the ancient maritime coast. And then they created Phoenicia Secunda, which extended unnaturally deep into the eastern desert, just to include cities like Damascus and Palmyra. Make no mistake, these were not natural nations. They were calculated pieces on a board designed to manage an empire. But here's the incredible part. Even trapped inside these rigid Roman provincial borders, the ancient city-states refused to lose their unique identities. Beirutis, which is modern-day Beirut, rose to immense prominence as the mother of laws, housing the empire's most famous provincial school of Roman jurisprudence. Heliopolis, or Baalbek, became the site of a truly monumental, awe-inspiring temple complex. And meanwhile, the ancient maritime powerhouses of Tyre and Sidon were granted special colonial status. The local fabric of these cities just continued to flourish independently beneath the imperial umbrella. And just in case you think Phoenicia simply faded away into the background as centuries passed, the historical record says otherwise. We have unshakable documentary evidence of its survival. Fast forward to about 380 AD, when St. Jerome was meticulously recording ecclesiastical events. In his writings, he explicitly names the priests of the Palestine/Israel region, Achaia, Phoenicia, and Phoenicia. This powerful primary text completely shatters the misconception that Phoenicia was absorbed or forgotten in antiquity. It was very much a recognized, living geographic and cultural reality well into the late Roman and early Byzantine eras. We see the exact same thing echoed in the meticulous administrative records of the early Christian Church. When the Ecumenical Council of Sardica convened in 343 AD, they issued documents that clearly distinguished the various provinces of the East. They specifically listed the Palestine/Israel region, Arabia, Phoenicia, and Colle Syria as separate and distinct entities. The formal, recognized presence of Phoenicia absolutely maintained its territorial integrity on the maps and in the records of the Byzantine world. But of course, empires rise and fall. The final chapter for Phoenicia as a formal political entity played out in the 7th century. After a devastating pillaging by the Persian king Khosrow II, the Byzantine emperor Heraclius mounted a massive offensive. Between 622 and 629 AD, he successfully restored the region to his empire. That moment in 629 marks the absolute last time in history that the ancient name and territorial integrity of Phoenicia held a formal politically recognized presence before the map was permanently altered. Shifting empires and languages, the dawn of the 7th century. This era marks a monumental turning point for the entire region. Shortly after Heraclius' victory, sweeping conquests arrived from the Arabian Peninsula. And this wasn't just a simple change in political leadership. It was a profound linguistic, cultural, and administrative reorganization that would bury the ancient designations under entirely new imperial frameworks. Honestly, the biggest shockwave was linguistic. For centuries, the native populations had been speaking Western Aramaic, the ancient vernacular of the region, and, famously, the spoken language of Christ. Following the 7th century conquests, Arabic was gradually introduced as the new vernacular for both administration and daily life. But remarkably, Aramaic refused to disappear entirely. It actually survives to this day in isolated mountain villages like Malula, and it's still preserved within the ancient, sacred liturgies of the Syriac and Maronite churches. New rulers, of course, meant a completely new map. The 7th century conquerors looked at this incredibly complex web of ancient, distinct nations and just lumped them all together into one undifferentiated territory, giving it the name Bilad ash-Sham. This was an entirely artificial entity. It spread across vastly different races, geographies, and historical boundaries, encompassing everything from the borders of Asia Minor all the way down to the southern deserts. And in later centuries, this blanket designation would be translated and romanticized as the concept of Greater Syria. Things got even more fractured under centuries of Ottoman Turkish rule. The imperial administrators basically weaponized geography to maintain control. They actively subdivided historically coherent regions. They separated ancient areas into isolated quasi-city-states. And through a mix of mismanagement and highly calculated policy, they frequently pitted diverse ethnic and religious groups against one another. It became a highly politicized, fragmented jigsaw puzzle forcefully imposed over the ancient lands of the Levant. But here is the ultimate takeaway from all this. The truth of the land outlasts the ink of empires. The genetic legacy of the Canaanites, the physical reality of the mountains and the coastal cities, and those meticulous historical documents from Gilgamesh to the Byzantine councils, all of these persist stubbornly beneath the artificial borders drawn by Roman, Arab, Ottoman, and eventually European powers. The foundations are permanent. So as we wrap up this explainer, we're left with a choice when we look at the Eastern Mediterranean today. We can view it through the temporary, shifting political narratives of the last few centuries, or we can recognize the vast, enduring historical evidence that stretches back over 5 millennia. The origins of the Levant are etched in stone, in ancient text, and in human DNA. The real question is, which history will we choose to remember?